welcome to the Daily Update. My name is Dakota, and I'm your host. Today we are interviewing a special guest. Her name is Makenna. She is a reporter for Campus Reform and a student at Liberty University. Makenna is a friend of mine who I've asked to interview on the show. So, let's dive right in.
All right. So, you're from Texas, right?
Yes, Austin, Texas.
Okay, Austin, Texas. And where do you go to school at?
So I actually go to Liberty University online, and I'm studying cybersecurity. I just transferred out of Texas A&M last September.
And there's a story behind you leaving Texas A&M. So you want to share that story with our listeners?
Well, in short, I was denied a cheesecake because I was a Trump supporter, and the girl blasted me as a racist and said that she refused to serve #TR*MP 2020 supporters at her campus business. So the next day I made a response video pretty much saying that I'm glad we have capitalism and that I would like to spend my money elsewhere. And someone screen recorded it off of my private Instagram story, sent it to her, she put on her Twitter, and it blew up. Over one weekend it had about 400,000 views, and I was just pelted with insults, and I had death threats, and I had my apartment address leaked, and an employee at my apartment complex said that I had a Trump shrine in my apartment and leaked my address, and that was pretty scary. And just everyone on campus knowing who I was and not liking me was a scary time, but it was worth it because I got to go on Fox and Friends one morning and share my side of the story, and it was really a rewarding experience. But I decided to leave Texas A&M for that reason, and then also because the political science program is not what I was looking for.
Yeah, and we've met at the Student Action Summit in West Palm Beach last December. And you were working for the Convention of the States at the time, and you presented at the Student Action Summit last December. So that's where we met. It was the beginning of the 2020 election. President Trump was there, and it was a really great conference. We had President Trump, Donald Trump Jr., a lot of people there. So, we're seeing that now 2020 is here. We're seeing that Joe Biden is the front runner for the Democrat nominee. And so, we're seeing all these Bernie supporters are now mad because Bernie got stubbed for the nomination again. So, we're seeing that happen, because Biden's the nominee. So who do you think that Biden is going to pick to be VP?
Well, I'm not entirely sure. I know it's probably going to be a woman. I'm sure it'll be a minority woman because he wants to play the identity politics and intersectionality game. So, I don't know. It's up to Kamala Harris, I guess. Some people were talking about the Michigan governor. And I don't know, some people were saying Michelle Obama. I think that's a plausible option. I could see it. I don't know if this is true or not, but I've heard rumblings that Biden will either step out and then give his delegates to whoever he picks for VP because he's unfit to run, or he'll win the election and then they'll invoke the 25th Amendment and declare him unfit because of his dementia or whatever he has. And then that VP will then be president. And it'll probably be someone much more radical than him.
Mm-hmm. And so, we're seeing that happening, and, we're seeing going through the coronavirus, his response to the coronavirus has been utterly appalling. When Trump announced the travel ban from China, people called him xenophobic. That President Trump gets attacked for whatever he does. It was interesting. I saw the tweet the other day that, we joked about a couple years ago that if Trump cured cancer, everybody would call him all sorts of names because he cured it. Well, this is basically that situation. Trump comes out with hydrochloroquine and they protest the cure. So,
Oh, yeah. It's so hypocritical because Trump says that hydroxychloroquine works. And then Governor Cuomo comes out a few hours later the next day and says the same exact thing. And Trump's the xenophobe, racist, the one who's touting this death medicine. But Cuomo says the same thing. He's not. Like, that just goes back to the left's hypocrisy in pretty much every area of life. If they didn't have double standards, they wouldn't have any standards at all.
Yeah, and we're seeing that throughout the left. We're seeing political correctness take over. We're seeing, I've never even heard of the word xenophobia until 2 years ago. So, they come up with all these phobias that, you're transphobic, you're xenophobic, you're racist. It's like they have a dictionary for all this stuff, leftist terms to use conservatives. So, we're seeing political correctness really take over.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and that's what's crazy is, before Trump ran for president, came down that escalator, he was the, icon for hip hop and rap music, and everybody wanted to be like him. African American community, with the white community, everybody idolized him. He was the American dream. He made it. Nice guy that's just made a bunch of money and is helping out with capitalism. But then he comes down the escalator, runs for president, and then all of a sudden he's a racist. I mean, he won the Ellis Island Award like Rosa Parks, and he was, revered in many communities, but now he's just the worst and a xenophobe and everything. Just like the the ad that came out yesterday for the campaign, and it's Obama sitting around with his buddies watching the TV, and it's Biden's gaffe of his hairy legs with the children and the roaches or whatever that was. And the first thing that the left said was, oh, it's racist. What about it is racist? They just have nothing else to say because you can't cover up that kind of terrible rhetoric coming from Biden every time he opens his mouth.
Yeah, we've seen the Daily Wire. We've seen all of these groups come out with Biden gaffes. And, we've played a whole bunch of them on the show here before. And, it's really just funny because he just provides his own type of comedy. He doesn't do it he doesn't do it intentionally, but he provides his own comedy to her. Really, that's all his rallies are, is comedy.
Yes. Just like the blue check marks on Twitter.
Exactly. If Trump makes a tweet, the blue check marks are replying 10 seconds after. It's like they have nothing else better to do besides watch President Trump's tweets. So, we're seeing these blue check marks who just utterly have no sense of what the American public feels or what they do at all.
Nope. And that just goes to show that Democrats disconnect to the American people. I mean, from Nancy Pelosi's ice cream out of her $24,000 fridge, gourmet ice cream, touting it to the world, displaying it while people are waiting in food lines to get food, and they're out of work and out of money trying to scrape by. And she is just acting all high and mighty, in her gated mansion and everything. She's gotten rich off the taxpayers' dollar. And it's just sickening seeing that coming out of the left.
Yeah, we're seeing these Democrats who become rich. A couple of them are being accused of insider trading because they had information beforehand that they used to sell off their stocks. Even some Republicans are facing criticism, like Senator Richard Burr and the Georgia senator, who is now facing backlash for using inside information to sell off their stocks. So, we're seeing that happen. We're seeing they basically come off the public dole. Nancy Pelosi's been in office for 35 years. Mm-hmm. And so has Chuck Schumer. We're seeing all these politicians who've been in political office for basically their entire lives. So, we're seeing their disconnect to the public society. And really, what, it amazes me that, they're still in office. San Francisco is a complete disaster right now. And that's Nancy Pelosi's backyard.
Oh, yeah.
So,
I mean, I honestly don't understand how she stayed in office for that long with the way that her city looks. I mean, San Francisco, I went several years ago, and it was beautiful. It was great. But then now, oh my goodness. I mean, people are shooting heroin and whatever, cocaine, all that, whatever the terminology is. I don't even know how you say it, but they're doing all that in the street. And then You have, they're trying to focus on plastic straws and getting rid of that. Like that's some big deal when you have this actually hurting and harming people in the homeless population. I don't get it. I don't understand these people that keep getting voted in.
And we're seeing this. We're seeing the hypocrisy. President Trump right now, his daily press briefings, which is been going at 5:30 every day. Has more ratings than CNN and MSNBC and all the mainstream media. It has more views than anything else playing. So we're seeing that President Trump really can connect with the American people. With his message. And so, we're seeing that President Trump is just going for a landslide in 2020.
That's what I'm thinking. I mean, most Americans are happy with the job that he's doing. And this always has the effect, like when a country goes to war or something happens to a country, it's that whole rally around the flag effect. And the left doesn't realize that that's what's happening here. We've seen that we've gotten attacked by a foreign enemy. And now we're kind of all unite, because that's what America does. We usually unite, and then we'll defeat it together. As Trump said, the invisible enemy, we're going to defeat it and come out on the other side better than ever. So that's what people are doing, and they're trying to tune in, and he's getting these ratings like the Bachelor finale and, NFL football games, everything, because people want to hear what he has to say. I mean, no other time in history has the president spoken to the American people directly every single day of the week for, a month and a half straight now? I mean, that is so unprecedented. And the fact that the media, mainstream media or lamestream media, as we hear from Trump now, can't even recognize that is just appalling.
Yeah, and we're seeing that President Trump just issued an order to the United States Navy to shoot down Iranian boats who threaten our United States Navy. And so, we're seeing that we're getting attacked by what President Trump calls the invisible enemy, or, the Chinese virus, whatever you want to call it. So, how is it in Texas, with the coronavirus going on?
So Texas isn't too bad. We love our Governor Abbott. He's trying to do as much as he can to keep businesses afloat and keep us close to as much of a normal life as possible. I've heard many stories from other people in other states, and I know Ohio, as you've told me, it's just like night and day compared to Texas. I mean, we're having to wear masks and stuff, and that's because of the Austin mayor kind of seeping in to all of our businesses. But Texas as a whole is definitely not as draconian or extreme as a shutdown as many other states, and law enforcement isn't being sent out when you text in a picture of people not social distancing. Thank you, Bolshevik, de Blasio. That is just so far gone. And then the drones coming over here from China. I mean, I cannot even imagine if that came to Texas, Texas was on the list for it, but I'm hoping it's not going to be near Austin. But yeah, I mean, Texas it's not too bad. I haven't noticed it as much because I always worked from home and did school from home anyway. So it's not too much of a change for me, but I've definitely heard from other states that it's rough.
Yeah, and we're seeing that happen throughout the country. We have all these governors who think they're all high and mighty, and even Mayor de Blasio's tip line has been flooding with solicit pictures and offensive memes, and that's really all it has been. And there's people now just sending pictures of de Blasio, not even social distancing.
Yeah.
Fine.
Him at the gym. That's so funny.
So, we're seeing Nazi Germany flood into New York City because, you're supposed to, you're doing the right thing by reporting your neighbor. So, we're seeing, we learned this in kindergarten. Stop tattletaling. Like,
right? Amen. Goodness, that's the definition of tattletaling right there.
Like the teacher wouldn't even hear you out when you try to tell on someone. So, now the government expects us to tell on anybody who basically resists. And we have people who comply, but we also have people who won't comply. And we're seeing these protests all across the country. We're seeing protests in Florida, Texas, Ohio, Michigan, California. We're seeing protests all over. And the South Dakota governor, Kirsten Noem, was just on Breitbart Wednesday, and they cut their coronavirus numbers by 70%. And they have been on a lockdown. So, we're seeing this, we're seeing all of this happen in today's society. So, we're seeing really the left is trying to take over, but, completely failing.
Right. And like you were telling me today, that now the director of health in Ohio is now pretty much the governor, and anything she says goes. And that's the problem with the left. I mean, besides that, everything else, but that's the problem, that they always think that experts are the answer. And if we put an expert into power in, a certain area, then they'll know everything and they can solve everything. If all the experts just ran our government, then we would have a perfect society. But that's not true, because experts are trained to put their blinders to everything else and focus in on one thing. We can't run a whole society or a whole state, whole locality even, with a person just focused and studying on one thing. We have to have a team of people all giving their input, looking at all the different aspects of a situation, because like this director of health is going to have public safety, and that is first, and then they're going to forget about the financials and the economic aspect of this and how people are being affected, and how there could be more problems. Like Trump says, the cure could be worse than the disease if more people are laid off and without jobs, and which results in more suicides and more depression cases. And that's going to be worse than the actual virus itself. So, I mean, the power is just going to our leaders' heads, and I think that they're just trying to hold on to this for as long as they can and stretching this out.
Exactly. And, I want to give you the final word here, but, we're seeing a lot of this happen throughout the country. We're seeing the left wants all these people, but, some of their ideas are completely unconstitutional, completely out of character on how a government is supposed to act. It's not what the founders intended. So, we're seeing all of that happen all throughout the country for the last 4 years, really.
Yeah. I mean, and then especially now with his immigration order, with him suspending this immigration for the next 60 days, I applaud the president for that move. I think that's smart, because we're safeguarding Americans' jobs. And it's crazy because the left wants everybody to stay in their house, and they want it to apply on the local and state levels, that all American citizens need to stay in their houses, and we need to, lock down, shut down, can't go out. But then when President Trump applies it to the national level, and he wants to shut down our borders, just like we're supposed to be shutting our doors, then they're like, oh, no, this is too far, this is not good. And that's just crazy, because it's so hypocritical. And Trump is really putting these people's feet to the fire. And I'm so glad that he can do that, and that he's so skilled in doing that in really all of his interactions. And I'm so glad that we have him as president.
Exactly. Thank you for coming on, and thank you for, talking to our listeners about this. It's the culture war. It's, some people would put it's really, the fate for the country for the next 4 years. It's, we're battling out a culture war.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for having me on.
Welcome. All right.
And thank you, Makenna, for being on our show today. If you'd like to learn more, please go to our website, www.mondaynightроundtable.com, or you can listen in on YouTube, Apple Podcast, or Google Podcast for today's episode. Make sure you like and subscribe for more videos. My name is Dakota Sawyer, and this has been the Daily Update.
So I can stand on my